Welcome into This Week in Missouri Politics, end of session edition, a session so packed with stuff we had to do an opinion maker panel for the entire show. Starting off with Representative David Tyson Smith from Columbia. Thank you for making the time.
Hey, glad to be here. It's always a pleasure.
Friend of the show, Bill Hardwick from Pulaski County.
Thanks for having me back, Scott.
Always appreciate it. Aaron Crossley from Eastern Jack. Appreciate you being here.
Happy to be here.
And the man that wins every week, Representative Brian Seitz. Thank you so much for joining us.
Superman's in the house.
Without a doubt. Hey, you had a good week.
I did.
Your HJR, which
Right.
essentially would be something to repeal and replace Amendment 3 on the abortion issue that was passed
Right.
last year by the voters,
Right.
is now, looks like it's heading to the ballot
Sure.
in 2026.
Right. I think HJR 73 re-adds the protections that were taken away for women in Amendment 3. If a woman is going to go through an abortion, then the individual participating in that needs to have hospital admitting privileges. She needs to know that the place is cleanly where that's happening. And I just think it's very important to protect women. We're going to protect children, and we're going to protect the infant in the womb. We did allow for the exceptions of rape and incest. And I think when people voted for Amendment 3, they were not voting for abortion on demand up until 9 months. They were voting for limited exceptions, including rape and incest, horrible crimes, horrific crimes, and so difficult to deal with both mentally and physically. So that's why we kept those in the legislation. And I think this will quantify the will of the people in Missouri. We are a pro-life state. We have a culture of life, and I think this will be expressed in the ballot box.
You during that floor debate, you were getting some live rounds thrown at you.
Sure.
Kept your composure the whole time.
Sure.
Just watch. Representative David Tyson Smith, I really enjoy you on the floor listening to you do debate. It to me it's an interesting thing. When you have the people vote, it's always better to have the argument when you've had a statewide vote to back up your side.
Yes.
What is the harm in letting folks take a second bite at the apple?
Well, it's insulting to the voters, Scott, and it's degrading because, as you heard my friend and colleague say, the voters didn't know what they were doing. You're insulting the Missouri voters. They knew what they were voting on. And to say, well, they really didn't understand it, we're going to do this again. And where does it stop? Because we're going to put this back on the ballot. If the voters decide they want legalized abortion again, are we going to do this every year? I mean, this is going to continue to happen.
Let me ask you this, though.
Yeah.
I understand your point there about insulting the voters. But with Queen Missouri, she was on the ballot and passed. The voters took a second look, went the other way. I wonder, though, when the law previously was on the books, it does seem like was more pro-life than the state was.
Sure.
Is there an argument that this law is a little too pro-choice and maybe finding somewhere in the middle, maybe the Goldilocks approach might be the right approach?
I'm not sure this is in the middle, Scott. I mean, I think, for example, this talks about medical emergencies, but the medical emergency provision is so extreme. It has to be irreversible damage. So a woman could have a serious injury to a bodily part, and if it's reversible, well, that's not a medical emergency. So you're telling a woman, well, we're going to do this procedure. If you have a child, you could have a serious injury, but 4 surgeries might fix it. So it's reversible. Therefore, it's not a medical emergency. So I don't think we're meeting in the middle. We're just doing it again. We threw in a little more, something maybe to placate a few people on one side or the other. But overall, we're just back at it. And, I'm glad there's some exceptions contained now that we didn't have before. But are we just going to keep doing this ad nauseum?
Aaron Crossley, I think you are, right? I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
if the pro-choice side, if the pro-life side wins and IP reform isn't passed, the pro-choice folks, whoever loses in 26, we'll just look to 28, right?
Well, the point that I made on the floor during the debate was I think this is a little bit less about overturning the will of the voters and more just that the majority party has no creativity and what else to talk about. This is one of their greatest hits. This is where they're able to stir up their base and get some political points rather than focusing on things that might not be as flashy, but, paving our roads, keeping our schools open, making sure our hospitals are functioning. Those are harder to message out, harder to win political points on, but that's really what people send us.
So, Aaron Crossley, I'll say this. You're a great person to have on this panel. You're the one person here who has to go run for re-election in a competitive race in the general.
Very excited.
I will say this, though. When Republicans run for office, they're pro-life, pro-gun. That's the top of everything. A large part of this state, the supermajority of this state, votes for candidates that are unabashedly pro-life and pro-gun. It's not like they're hiding it, right?
No, not at all. And most Missourians do support abortion access. And the language in Amendment 3 was really aligned with Roe v. Wade and the protections that offered, and that is really the more moderate compromise when it comes to abortion policy.
I think we could have seen abortion on demand up until 9 months. And again, removing the protection factors for women is not something that the Missouri voter wants. And I think you're absolutely correct. It moves the bar or the line a little bit to the left. It allows for these exceptions, and I think that will be the will of the voter, and I'm predicting 60-40. I'm 60%.
I love Brian Seitz's optimism. I don't think 60-40, right?
I don't know. I think it'll
Maybe
pass.
60-40 in your district.
I think it'll pass because I think that the voters didn't expect that court ruling that happened before session that struck down every single abortion restriction, every health and safety restriction we had related to abortion in Missouri. And so it's probably too extreme for most voters. And I think when people dive into HJR 73 and the language on it, they'll see protections for women. They'll see reasonable regulations. They'll see the legislature can regulate.
You read the whole thing on a ballot measure before you vote. I don't.
Well, if you look at the ballot wording, which I think very accurately reflects what the whole HJR says, it's focused on.
I read the headline.
Health, yeah.
I don't read all that. Does anybody really read all that stuff?
You've got a year and a half. We've plenty of time to.
I'm not a good
plenty
reader.
of time to research.
Well, let me ask you this: I watch Republicans sit in these chairs week after week on Clean Missouri and said it is wrong to put multiple subjects in. You're just trying to distract the voters. You're doing ethics, but not really, and you're gerrymandering. And I agreed with them. That's not right. In this thing, you have abortion, which is what this is about, but you put a bunch of trans language in there that I think it makes it easier to pass. But is it not a little hypocritical?
If you look at what the Constitution says about the restrictions on amending it, it's amending one article at a time. And that article can contain what that article needs to contain. So if you look at Clean Missouri, for example, that article has restrictions on legislature, gifts, ethics, elections, redistricting. So it's one article that's amended, but the court ruled, the Missouri Supreme Court ruled on that. That's related to the legislature. So if this article is the one that's amended is related to health and safety, I think it probably counts.
Representative Tyson, I remember it being said a little differently by the Republicans when it was Clean Missouri.
Absolutely. I think we're talking out of both sides of our mouth, and no disrespect.
I think both sides do, frankly.
Yeah. I don't think this is going to be held up. I don't think it's constitutional. I don't think the court is going to have that same rationale that my colleague does. And I think everyone agrees this was ballot candy. The Democrats agreed to put this on the ballot without the language, without the trans language. The Republicans didn't want to do that, and they moved for a PQ. I mean, our side was being reasonable. We said, you know what, we'll go forward, remove this. The Republicans weren't willing to do that.
Aaron Crossley, the Democrats are the innovators of ballot candy. They're the Hershey's of ballot candy, and now they don't like it when the Republicans basically imitation is a serious form of flattery. The Republicans are flattering the heck out of you guys.
Well, thank you. And I don't think that that's true. And whatever's happened in the past, we have to move forward with whatever is sensible. And I'm tired of putting policies on the back of trans kids and picking on them every day. And I think that's what's happening here again.
Yeah, I see no ballot candy whatsoever. This is part and parcel of Amendment 3. Reproductive health care was not adequately declared what that was. Does reproductive health care cover trans surgeries and so forth? And should a child be able to make that decision without parental consent, or should they have the cognitive ability as an adult, 18 years and above, to make decisions for themselves? We have to protect kids in the state of Missouri.
I think that's a 90-10. That's probably conservative viewpoint. But isn't it added to this to help it pass? If it wasn't, you had a whole deal set up.
Sure.
Many things could have passed if you'd have pulled that trans language out, but you needed to pass this.
Right. Again, does that have to do with reproductive health care? And it's very clear on the ballot summary. People will know what they're going to vote for. And I again say 60-40, and we'll see.
And I will say again, I respected you on the floor.
Sure.
You showed a lot of restraint. It was very difficult, I'm sure. Look, you had very passionate members on the other side of the aisle making points they believed in. You kept your cool, but it feels like some of the rancors boiled over back to Branson.
No, I don't think so. Branson, again, my district.
That means you personally.
Me personally, no, I'm not angry. I do have a sore throat after talking so much.
But you've seen some calls.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of phone calls. In fact, my wife received a phone call this morning, a very threatening phone call, saying I'll just say evil things about me, things about her. It was put on the internet by this woman, a realtor in Columbia, that my wife should have died of the cancer that she
Oh,
had 2
There's no
years
place
ago.
for that. I think everybody agrees.
Attacking me is one thing. I expect it. But to attack someone else, especially a family member, we're going to pray for that woman, and we hope that she comes to terms with whatever she's angry about.
Let's talk about Proposition A. Passed by the voters.
Right.
I mean, I think personally, probably one of the worst public policies the state's ever seen. It would be very detrimental, but the voters voted for it. Do you have a little bit of a pause, even if you passionately disagree with it, in overturning something the public voted for?
Your premise is one of the worst public policies you've ever seen.
Ever.
So if I am a legislator and do I have a duty to change one of the most destructive public policies ever that's not sustainable for businesses in the state, that keeps people from hiring people, that hurts enterprise in our state across the board? I think we're doing the right thing by taking away a policy that's really hurting business.
Does it give you a little more? Look, if this was a law that was passed 20 years ago and you're changing it, it's one thing. Does it give you a little pause to overturning something that was just voted in November?
I think that, yes, for sure. You think about that. But I also think about, I got emails, phone calls, text messages from business owners, from employees and employers in my area that said, are they going to get Prop A done? Are they going to fix this? Because we're going to go out of business. And the employee who wanted the benefits would receive none of those benefits if their business went out of business. So I think I got a duty to everybody that wants to have a job, that wants to thrive and succeed, to get the policy right for our state.
Did the Republicans walk into a trap?
Possibly. And, I think it's interesting to suggest that this is the worst public policy decision ever or terrible.
It's very tough on businesses.
Yeah. I own a small business. And when this passed, my business partner, we were in her office and she said, what are we going to do about this? And I could tell that she had some consternation. I said, we'll figure it out. We'll work it out. And we would. So I think, again, to say that the voters don't know what's good for themselves and they don't know what's good for Missouri is awful. That's what you're saying. Well, you don't know. The voters don't know. You're passing bad policy. That's what they want.
I'm a voter. I thought I voted against those bad, but I was outvoted, and I respect the fact that the majority of this state disagrees with me on it. So I'm with you on that. But politically speaking, I do think there's a scenario here where Prop A goes on the ballot. It's proposition. You change it the first year. It was changed almost before it could go into effect. I think there's a very good case to go put this in the Constitution, and probably. Here's what I see. I see a lot of business folks that'll be in these offices of these legislators. You've got to change this, got to change this. Where will they be with their checkbooks next fall? The way I've seen this happen many, many times in the past is they won't be.
We'll see. We'll see.
But the folks that funded Prop A, I think they will be.
It's hard to predict. And, the problem is, one thing we have to take into consideration is the X factor. And the X factor here is when we're undoing something that the voters voted on, that creates a whole different energy in Missouri. And people come out in droves. They become angry. They become activated. I've been speaking around the state, mid-Missouri primarily, various rallies, and I haven't seen this much energy in a long time. I went to one event. They said, how many people here, this is your first rally? About 40% of the hands went up. These are not your typical people that are upset.
Because it does feel like there's a rally, the same people show up, right?
What's that?
It feels like in some of these rallies, like I see at the Capitol, it's a lot of the same people. You're saying almost half the people are new?
That's gosh. I'm not just saying this to be a politician. I was invited to talk in the plaza, and I walked in there. People were aware of me. I hadn't even been there before. Someone said, how many of you, this is your first time? About 40% of the hands go up.
Really? That's interesting.
I've been speaking around in Missouri, and there's an electricity in the air, and people say, well, it's a woke mob. It's paid protesters. This is not a woke mob. And these are not
paid protesters, but that's interesting.
There might be these are veterans.
Yeah.
Veterans, hey, come to my house or watch the hummingbirds, and I think if there could be a serious miscalculation in this state if people are assuming these are just paid protesters, paid organizers to come out. There's going to be a serious backlash to the far right. These are people that are upset, and we can't, people can't be tone deaf about what's happening in this state.
Representative, I think you might have walked into a trap here.
No, I don't think so. Referencing Branson, Missouri, if you're a theater owner that employs 100 employees, you'll have to fire at least 4 to give everyone else a week's paid vacation. And that's what I call it, a week's paid vacation. If you're a barber and you have 5 barber chairs and someone calls in, the business owner's not making money, and yet he has to pay for the person that's playing golf. Again, should government be involved in telling businesses what to do as far as what the things that they offer as far as medical and so forth? It will harm Branson businesses, and that means it will harm businesses in the state. If the business, as Representative Hardwick said, if the business is closed down, you're not receiving anything. You could put everyone gets a free house on the ballot, and most people are going to vote for it. But who's going to pay for it?
Well, in this situation, though, I agree with you. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I agree with you. I think it'll be very bad for this state's business community.
Sure.
Doesn't matter how many weeks of paid vacation you get if you don't have a job.
Right.
But politically, these things pass. Minimum wage hikes pass all over the country.
Sure.
Almost every time they're on the ballot. Why would they not put this in the Constitution in 26 and have a good logical argument of why they need to?
Well, why not allow the business owner decide the pay scale and decide whether or not he wants to offer those benefits?
I actually agree with you.
And if the business A has those benefits and business B does not, the people from business B might go to business A. Let the people decide instead of forcing business owners who give the people a paycheck for the work done, not for staying home.
I couldn't agree with you more, but let me get a prediction out of you. Will this be on the ballot in 26, but this time in the Constitution?
We'll see. We'll see. I don't want to make a prediction on that right now, but we'll see.
I'll make. What do you think?
No.
Oh, you're both wrong. Yes,
Yes and yes.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah,
Why
no.
would I think they planned this from the very beginning? Why in Missouri would you pick a proposition? You would just put it in the Constitution. It's so easy to put something in the Constitution. The difference is so small from the proposition to put it in the Constitution. I think it planned this from the beginning.
Let's look out where the money's coming from.
I agree with all that.
Propositions. And is
They're
it coming
the
from
Federalist
out of
Society
state?
on the right just
Sure.
does things to Missouri, not for Missouri.
Right.
They're out in Washington. They don't care about anybody here. They color Missouri on a map, and the same people that funded Prop A, it's just the Federalist Society and these people look at each other in a mirror. It's the same groups that don't care anything about this state,
Right.
but they'll do it, and they're successful.
Again,
You think they won't put this back on the ballot?
No, I don't think so. No, absolutely.
I think Superman needs his X-ray vision because that is going to be on the ballot. I think
It's
it's
not
gonna
the
pass.
Federalist
I've been right.
Society calling me.
I've been right so far.
It's the hardware store owners. It's people who have small farms. They're the people who are calling me. Not
Federalist Society never calls you. They just bond the state with money to make you elect people. But we got to take a break. Speaking of money, we got to make some money here. Take a break. We'll be right back and talk about the passing of one of the greatest Missourians in state history, Senator Kit Bond, after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
You know, Missouri farmers have been doing what's best for their land for generations. After all, no one knows what it takes to feed and fuel a growing global population better than they do. So why are trial lawyers threatening Missouri farmers' best defense against weeds? Our farmers don't need to be controlled. They need to be supported. Keep glyphosate in our state. Show your support at TakeControlMissouri.com. Paid for by Modern Ag Alliance in support of Missouri farmers.
Missouri's childcare crisis is hurting our children, families, and even our economy. Currently, 78 Missouri counties are designated as childcare deserts, where the number of kids needing childcare exceeds the number of available options. Today, some Missouri families are spending more on childcare than housing, and Missouri's childcare shortage costs our economy $1.35 billion every year. Missouri families and businesses deserve better. Learn more at mochampionofchildren.com.
Some politicians claim cockfighting is a proud tradition, but is it really something to be proud of? Cockfighting isn't just cruel to animals, it's cruel to humans. It's linked to organized criminal activity, illegal gambling, even drug trafficking. Leading law enforcement and Christian groups have spoken out and are urging a stop to the violence. But some politicians want to give cockfighters a pass. Keep cockfighting out of our state.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren, Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back. This Week in Missouri Politics, end of session edition, joined by 4 members of the Missouri House. Bill Hardwick, one of the greatest statesmen, maybe the greatest statesman in the history of Missouri, Kit Bond. Hello, Brad.
Mr. President.
The guy who's got who's Cindy O'Loughlin's the chair of his fan club. Welcome back. This Week in Missouri Politics, end of session edition. Bill Hardwick, probably the greatest statesman Missouri's ever known, Kit Bond. You could go from Pineville to Cahokia, Rockport, all the way down to Crothersville. You can't drive 30 miles in this state without seeing a bridge Kit Bond helped build, a mile of road, a water pipe, a sewer plant, a building at a college. Kit Bond did more for this state than maybe anyone in the history of it.
I think he's our greatest statesman. And I say Kit Bond like you say Kit Bond. I don't say governor or senator Kit Bond because the person that he was even transcended those titles. He's a figure of Missouri history. I remember the first time I met him as a teenager, and I thought he was a pro. He cared about the state. He understood what was going on. And I think a lot, when I think about him, I think about an interview you did with him. And he said the advice for everybody who wants to aspire to run for office, go talk to people and figure out where they are and listen to them. Mm-hmm. And then meet their needs and hear their concerns and address what's going to make their life better.
Love this.
It's great, great advice. And I take everything he said to me to heart for each time I got a chance to talk to him.
He did a lot for the University of Missouri.
Absolutely. And I don't think he ever missed a football game. Yeah. He was a football fan. He's very gracious. He had a sense of humor. He used to say, I'm a recovering attorney. And I'm an attorney. So I was like, hey, what do you mean? He invited me once up to a birthday party of his where they had like the fatted calf or a cow they killed, like the state winning cow. And, he was a great host, very friendly, very amicable. And as an attorney, I drive down to court in Mexico, Missouri, and I drive by his estate and I always look over and wonder, kind of what he was up to. But yeah, he had a great reputation and he was fair and he was a statesman.
Aaron Crossley, well, a Cardinal fan. Kit Bond had a very special place in his heart for the Kansas City area. He spent a ton of time there. Kansas City is littered with projects that Kit Bond brought home.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I grew up seeing his name all over the place. And I think one of the greatest tributes to his life was just when a point of personal privilege was given the other day in the House. And you could just feel the bipartisan love for Kit Bond and people.
Brian Seitz, he exuded a love for this state.
Absolutely.
He loved Missouri.
And he was more than willing to talk to what we would consider, quote, the average voter, not just the lobbyist. If someone wanted to talk to him and shake his hand, he would do that. I became involved in Republican politics in the late 1980s during the Reagan era. And he was one of those that if he walked off a plane, it was like Johnny Cash walking off a plane. He was cool.
I've had dinner with him at the Ritz-Carlton and saw him walk around those folks and feel fine. But I think he felt more comfortable when we'd stop and get a beer somewhere with just a guy who might even know who he is.
Sure. Absolutely.
Let's talk about House Bill 19, kind of where session was on the tracks, and it kind of got a little off there. The House's position, I guess, is that they didn't have enough time to read House Bill 19, and they didn't. It was too much money, correct?
Right. I think so. Again, legislation of that import needs to be vetted. Why did the Senate give us that at the last second and then go home? We had 2.5 hours left on the clock where we could have went to caucus, we could have discussed it and so forth, but the Senate got it to us too late, and leadership had to make a decision, and I support Dirk Deaton's decision.
So when the Royals came for their stadium, they gave you about 4 hours notice, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and we were looking for the numbers. I voted no. And I understand the economic benefit, but does the average Missouri citizen think we should be subsidizing millionaires? I don't think so.
You're right about that. But Aaron Crossley, this is your folks. This is your teams. I do think it's almost Shakespearean how the House says we don't have money for a crime lab in Poplar Bluff or a library in Rolla.
Absolutely.
But 96 hours later, with no notice whatsoever, we have $300 million to give to sports teams.
Yeah, I think it made it hard for a lot.
It made it impossible.
Of my members, including in my caucus, to be able to stomach that. I mean, the difference is this is legislation that we're considering for the stadiums that would be an incentive. It sets up the legal structure for the incentive. It's up to future legislatures to decide if they would fund that and what that would look like going forward. This is just one good faith measure to make sure that the economic impact that the stadiums make in my community continues to happen.
Bill Hardwick, so you had 3 days to look at the Senate bill come out of committee. House Bill 19 did come out of Senate committee. You had about 90 minutes to look at the Royal Stadium funding. I don't know how you could go back and say, well, the hospital in Salem needs to close now, but we're going to give the Royals $300 million, who barely have 300 fans.
Yes, and when I voted no on the stadium subsidy, that's what I had in mind, is that people had hospitals and schools and priorities in rural Missouri. And I'm looking down the horizon to what our budget picture looks like. And I think we need to think about making sure we have spending under control so as to make even more painful decisions years down the road.
Representative, I just think when the House Budget Chairman killed all those projects around the state, boy, he made Kehoe's job so much harder to get this incentive package through.
Oh, 100%. And it hurt us personally. I mean, there was $50 million in 19 for MER, the reactor.
And that might be the most important thing in this state.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in the stadium bill, there's a $50 million tax credit, up to $50 million. So I thought it was ironic, these two $50 million numbers there. It put the legislature in a terrible position, especially because you're not just talking about funding some sports teams, you're talking about trying to keep them from leaving. And so it's not just, hey, let's just throw money to a stadium. It's, do we want the Chiefs to leave? But the timing was awful.
If this was just a Chiefs thing, I think it might have got done.
Sure. Yeah.
Give me a prediction. It appears as though the governor's going to call a special session. I assume the House will pass this bill pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I think it's tough. The Democrats, after they were PQ'd, give me a prediction. Will there be a special session?
I think there will be. Yeah.
You're going to get a bill done in that special session?
Probably not the stadium bill.
What do you think?
There's a special session, we get a bill done of some kind.
What do you think?
I do think that there will be a special session. I'm hopeful that we will be able to keep the stadiums here, but the majority party can't kill the projects in the communities and then be sad about them having been killed.
What do you think?
The legislation has to be vetted. We didn't have time to do that. So we can do that in a special session. But is it going to change the minds of the voters or we, their representatives? I don't think so.
We'll see. It'll be up to the Democrats in the Senate. Are they going to play ball? I think they're pretty ticked off right now.
Well, they may stay home.
With a minute left, who won the week?
Ashley Ani, because she had such a interesting session as a new Democratic minority leader. She had a lot of obstacles, a lot of resistance, and she came out at the end of the day with a cigar on a boat, kind of like Bill Clinton used to. So she survived all of that, and so I give it to her.
I have high regard for Representative Bonnie.
Future generations of children with the legislature passing HJR 73.
Did you get it passed by the people?
I think so.
Won the week?
I would say Kansas for the future tax revenue that they'll receive from the stadiums in their community.
Wow. Who won the week?
I won the week, I won the month, and I won the year.
That was
the easiest question today.
I got to say, the Missouri Farm Bureau going to be offering health plans to folks in rural areas that up till now haven't had access to a lot of health care. But I really think, the state of Missouri lost the week. The passing of its greatest statesman, Kid Bond. He'll be laid in state Tuesday in the state capitol, and it'll be a nice week of tributes to someone who deserves probably more than a week. We'll see you next week here on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, the United Electric Cooperative, and the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts.